If you're in this space for the first time, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Feel free to use the chat to also share what brought you here, how you heard about us, and also just to introduce yourself to the community. Um, and also, too, we'll be dropping our tiny URL into the chat, which is where you can sign up. Be sure to sign up through there because you will stay in touch with all of the exciting things we have going on this year, such as like events, monthly updates, official announcements, and you'll also be able to receive our monthly newsletter. And before we get started, too, I also almost forget to introduce myself. My name is Brianna. I'm the membership engagement outreach coordinator here at IJ. Sorry, it's a mouthful. And I will pass it to Ephraim to also introduce himself for those who don't know him.
Hey everyone, good to see everybody. My name is Efrain Ortiz, pronouns he, him, his. The program's associate here with Initiate Justice. Thank you all for being here today. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Adriana.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Ooh, my voice did a thing, my bad. What's up, everyone? I'm Adriana Griffith. I'm the statewide advocacy manager here at Initiate Justice. I see some familiar faces, some names that might be new to me. So happy to be in space with everybody. And yeah, pass it back to you, Brianna.
Thank you, team. As always, thank you for being here. Just to be with the community, and also for those that are joining, just one last reminder to, if you can, stay on mute while we're talking throughout tonight, and feel free to use the chat as we will be recording this call, so it just helps to kind of avoid background noise. But you can always use the chat to interact with each other and ask questions. And just a little bit of what we'll be getting into tonight. So we are going to be talking about visiting your state representatives and talking just about like the importance of that and kind of giving you all a little like training per se, kind of around how you can go out and visit your state representatives as well. So a lot to kind of discuss tonight. I don't want to take up any more time, but before we do, I'm going to pass to Ephraim so he can share some things that we have coming up in the next couple of weeks at IJ.
Awesome. Thank you, Brianna. So yes, we have a couple things lined up here at Initiate Justice and want to give you all some information. Definitely, we finally have a secure date and a secure location for our Mother's Day brunch. I know we've been talking about it the last couple meetings. So it's going to be on Saturday, May 31st. At the Tarzana Community and Cultural Center. It's in the San Fernando Valley. I believe it's Encino, but it's out here in San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles area. So definitely stay tuned for more information. Sign up to become a member if you are not already. So, and then stay connected also with our social medias to get more information on that. But I know the team's been working very hard in bringing that together again to celebrate all women that have been impacted by incarceration. So looking forward to that. Another thing we have coming up this April 24th, it's going to be a Thursday, April 24th at 6 p.m. We're going to have our second in-office volunteer mail night. Again, just a great opportunity for folks to come together, help us respond to some mails from our inside members, as we do have a lot of mail coming in, looking to have some more in the near future. But you can sign up, and then Adriana dropped the link already in the chat to sign up for that. Just a reminder, this is if you've done mail nights with us before previously, great for you to come back. If you've never done it before, come join us. We'll have a quick tutorial of how we do the process. It's a simple process, but again, just looking forward to being in community with you all. So yeah, no experience needed. The only thing we require is that you have your own laptop with access to Google Docs. So again, that's for Thursday, April 24th at 6 p.m. And then coming right up, and actually we'll be sharing with you all, we'll share you all the link and everything, kind of why we're having this meeting today, right? We'll have our spring meet and greet visits in district with state representatives. You will be, we're inviting you all to join us at IJ plus with our organizers leading the way for these meet and greet visits with state reps The meetings will be held from the week of April 21st through May 2nd. And then you can sign up there on that tiny URL that Adriana dropped in the chat. But yeah, very excited to have you all, whatever, if you are in the area, sign up with us, join us. If you can make it down for some of these, amazing. If you're not like in the area, but looking forward to being in space with you all. I'll pass it back to you, Brianna.
Thank you.
Can I quickly add one more thing about the meet and greet? So just to add a little bit more context to it. So we are going to be talking about doing legislative visits tonight and teaching you all and showing you all tips, tricks, tools on how to engage with your state reps, whether it's at the state capitol or whether it's in district in your own communities. And so these spring meet and greets that we are coordinating, that our lovely, lovely outside organizers will be leading, will be in district meet and greet visits. So that means they will be local, not in Sacramento, not at the Capitol office, but they will be like in your local communities, in your local cities. And so we have a bunch of visits that we are getting scheduled right now with different reps throughout the state. So I recommend everybody go click on the link, learn a little bit more, sign up if you are interested. You need absolutely no experience necessary. Our organizers are trained and they will be leading you, and they will be also providing you all the information that you will need to have a successful visit. And these visits, you're not necessarily talking about legislative bills or anything like that. It's really just an opportunity for you to engage with your state representative and get to know their office, get to know what their policy priorities are, what they care about. It's also an opportunity for you yourself to share with your representatives what you care about, what's important to you, and also maybe bring some attention to what's going on in your own local communities. So that's just a little bit more. There's a lot more information on the Google form, but definitely sign up. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me or Efrain, and I'll go ahead and drop our emails into the chat so you can reach out if you have any questions. But that's all. Passing it back to you, Brianna.
Thank you, Adriana. That's kind of a perfect segue into just like the tonight's topic, what we'll be talking about in terms of just like visiting your state representatives and kind of like a how-to, and just us kind of sharing some tips and tricks around that. So we can go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Just kind of gonna walk you through the presentation. So give me 1 second to do that. You can all see it? Awesome. All right, well then I will pass it back to you to get started. I think it's Adriana.
It is me. And some of y'all might have noticed that we skipped our grounding this month. And that is really just because we have so much information that we wanted to bring to you. We wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time to cover it. So hopefully you're not too upset with us for skipping it this month, but we'll be back next month. But just to get started, like we said at the top of the meeting, tonight's presentation is all about understanding and learning all about how to use your voice and your power when engaging with your state representatives. So before we get started, I can see most of everybody. I'm curious if everybody knows who their state representatives are. So that would be like your state senator or your state assembly member. So feel free to either raise your hand virtually, or if your camera's on, or drop an answer in the chat. I'm just very curious to see who knows who their state representatives are. And again, that's your state senator or your state assembly member. Just to see how much I need to go into things. Okay, so I see one hand. All right, cool. So we'll make sure. Okay, cool. I see some stuff coming through the chat. Some people, yes, some people not so much. So cool. No problem. No worries at all. We are going to go through this and help y'all learn a little bit more about how to find out who your representatives are and then how to engage with them. So Brianna, you can go to the next slide. First, first up, this is how you find out who your oh, go back. There we go. This is how you find out who your state representatives are. So if you don't know who your state representatives are, scan this link. If you are able to scan the QR code, also can drop something into the chat. It's the Find Your Rep link, so we can drop that into the chat as well. So I'm dropping that in right now. There you go. So you can use this link to find your state representatives that represent your specific district here in California. So how it works is you'll either scan that QR code or you'll go to the link that I just dropped in the chat. It'll ask you to enter your address. So that's your residence address where you currently live. So you enter that full address, you'll hit enter or submit, and then it will pop up on screen with your state representative. So it'll give you your state senator and your state assembly member. So I'll give everybody a minute. Also feel free to screenshot this little screen as well and save it for later. But the link is there. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to do it. So we'll give it a couple more seconds. My assembly member, by the way, she just got elected into Assembly District 13. Her name is Rhodesia Ransom. And my state senator is Jerry McNerney, and we're in Senate District 5. So San Joaquin County is the district that I live in. All right, so we can go to the next slide, Brianna. All right, so hopefully everybody was able to type in, find out who their reps are. If you're able to, go ahead and drop into the chat what you found out when you went to that link there. Curious to see where everybody is kind of coming from in the chat tonight. But so we're just going to start off with a little bit of an overview of the California State Legislature. So the California State Legislature is sort of like a two-part legislature, or bicameral legislature is what we call it. So there's two chambers or two houses. We have the Senate and we have the Assembly. And so the Senate has 40 senators for every district in California. So that's 40 senators for 40 districts. And then we have 80 assembly members, again, one for each assembly district in the state. So we have 80 assembly districts and 40 Senate districts. Altogether, these people make up representation for you. So they represent you at the state level, where they not only do they pass new state laws like legislative bills and resolutions, but they also pass a state budget to fund all of California state agencies, and this includes CDCR, unemployment, so the Employment Development Office, EDD, other state agencies, licensing boards, all of those things. And they're also advocates for you. So that means they can do casework for you as it relates to state agencies. Okay, I'm seeing some folks drop in their representatives. That's what's up. That's what's up. Hopefully you find somebody in common with that lives in the same district as you, and y'all can sort of link up. But going back to this presentation here, when I mentioned that they are advocates for you, so you are their constituent, and their job is to advocate for you at the state level. Again, that means with all state agencies, including CDCR. So, Initiate Justice, the type of organization that we are constantly dealing with CDCR because that is the population that we deal with. We're impacted people. We're impacted by incarceration, our loved ones, our family members. And so sometimes we run into issues with CDCR where we're trying to figure out what to do, what's the next step, who are we supposed to call, all of those things. Your state legislature, whether it's your senator or your assembly member, their office is a perfect place to go when you are running into some type of a roadblock with a state agency. So again, these folks are able to help you. They can do casework. They can find out certain types of information for you and kind of be your advocate, right? When you are going through things and you're trying to figure out what is the best resource to turn to, your state assembly member or your state senator's office can be a wealth of information. So just as a very, very quick example of how your representatives can be there for you. My mom was having some medical issues or some healthcare issues with the healthcare agency. I went to my senator at the time, Susan Eggman, and knowing that she sat on the health committee, had my mom reach out. Long story short, short story long, a few weeks later, the situation was resolved. And so there's a lot of different things that your state representative can do for you beyond just passing laws, but these are their primary jobs. State laws, to pass state laws, pass the state budget and be an advocate for you. Any questions on this slide before we move on? Awesome. Okay. Go ahead, Brianna. And feel free to drop questions, raise your hand throughout this presentation. We want to make sure that if questions are coming up, that they're getting answered, things like that. So drop them in the chat, or like I said, raise your hand and we'll invite you to come off mute. And so taking a step back from who our legislators are and what they do, we want to make sure that we review the legislative process as well. And so it's important to know the legislative process because at any time you can go and see your state representative at any time. But at certain times of the year, it might be more strategic, especially if you are trying to advocate for a bill or a particular issue. You want to know what's going on at the state legislature at any given time. And so it's just important to know that all bills start with an idea and they go through this entire legislative process where you have to go through different committees, policy committees, a rules committee that kind of determines which policy committee you're going to go to. And that policy committee, like public safety, which is the committee that initiate justice bills, often go through. They go through that to determine whether or not they're going to go on to the next step. Once they go on to the next step, it could be like a fiscal committee, which we call the appropriations committee that deals with money and funding and budget for certain pieces of legislation. And once it gets past that, it goes to a floor vote where everybody on the assembly or the Senate gets to vote on it, depending on which side a bill starts on. So sometimes a bill might start on the assembly side, and that's where you'll see things like AB 622, right? Or it might start on the Senate side where you'll see a bill number like SB 2325, right? So if it starts in the assembly, it's an AB. If it starts in the Senate, it's a SB. And so once it goes through that first house, it repeats this whole process all over again until it makes it all the way to the governor's desk where he gets to sign it. And then hopefully something gets passed into law and takes effect January 1st of the following year. So we share this process because, again, at any given time, you can go to your state representative throughout this entire process. So from the bill idea, that idea might come from you. It might come from your organization. It might come from a loved one. It might come from your own personal lived experience. So ideas come from everybody everywhere. So you can go see your representative for an idea and say, hey, I have an idea. Or you can go when it goes to one of these policy committees and say, hey, I really want you to support this if they happen to be on that committee. Or if it's going to be on the floor of the assembly or the Senate, you can go talk to your legislator and say, hey, I really want you to support this when it gets to the floor. When it's your turn to vote on this, I want you to vote yes, or I want you to vote no. Right. And so it's really important to know the process because you just want to know, like, at what point in the year am I going to go see my legislator? And then if it has nothing to do with the bill, then you can go at any time. Right. I think I see a hand, or I saw a hand. Somebody raised a hand. So if you have a question, definitely raise your hand because I want to make sure. I see something in the chat. Are these slides on the website? They're super helpful. No, they are not on the website, but we can definitely share them out with folks after if this is definitely helpful. We want to make sure y'all have the tools for sure. Go ahead, Megan. I see your hand.
For the Senate or the Assembly, like, is there a particular reason why a bill would go or start in either area, or is it just like, oh, I think this senator will pick this up, or oh, I think this assembly member will pick it up?
That's a really great question. So yes, it's all about strategy sometimes. So when somebody has a bill that they want to introduce or they want to take to a legislator, they may go to an assembly member because maybe they have a relationship with that assembly office, or that assembly member might have a really good track record of running a bill in that same nature. Same thing on the Senate side. So sometimes it really is just about like who your champion is going to be, like who your bill champion is going to be and which house they happen to be in. That's a great question. I know Initiate Justice has had bills both in the Assembly and in the Senate. And we currently have some bills both in the Assembly and the Senate right now. So that's a great question. Any other questions?
No,
Can I just
Oh,
add
go ahead,
real
Antoinette.
briefly? Yeah, just adding that like sometimes so bills will always start in the house of who's authoring it. So like Adriana said, sometimes it is strategy, but sometimes it's just that's the author who introduced a bill. Because keep in mind, not all bills are actually sponsored by an organization like IJ bills are, right? The idea could just come from, for instance, Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez. He has an idea, this is the bill, so it starts in that house. So sometimes it's not strategy, that's just where the bill is starting because that's who the author is. So I just want to also kind of add that because we know that we sponsor a lot of bills and our partners do, but there are a lot of bills that go through the legislature that are just author sponsored, that aren't sponsored by a particular organization. So there may not be like a strategy behind it. Just wanted to also add that context.
That's a great point. That's a really, really great point. Thank you for adding that. Appreciate it. I see your hand. Go ahead.
So the author, does it have to be, I know there's author and there's sponsor. Is author the person that comes up with the idea, or?
Not always. And so that's a really great question as well. So the author is the assembly member or senator who is taking the bill through the whole legislative process. The idea can definitely come from anybody. So I can have a bill idea and take it to my assembly member or my state senator and say, hey, I have this idea for a bill. I want you to run it and take it through to the end. And they can, and then they would become the author. And then like co-sponsors are a little bit different where it's sort of like organizations. And so like organizations like Initiate Justice, we have an idea, we take it to a legislator, they run it, they're the author, but we are the co-sponsors of the bill. And so I think when it's just like a private citizen, you're not necessarily a co-sponsor, but sometimes what'll happen is like a bill can be named after somebody that brought it. So it could be named as like the A.O. Lewis Act, right? Or something like that. If the author, if that legislator is working with you and wants to take that on your behalf, they can name it like that. If it fits like your situation. So I've seen that happen before. Great question. All right. I'm seeing some other questions in the chat. Can we share this flow chart and cite that it comes from Initiate Justice? Absolutely. And this also, this is just the way we put it together, but this process you can also find on the Assembly or the Senate website. So you can also Google, this is how I always find it quickly. I just simply Google the California legislative process and the process always pops up. But ours is definitely a lot more, I think, easier to understand. So definitely, yes, you can share this. All right, we're gonna go to the next slide, but definitely please keep the questions coming for sure. All righty, so this is where we're gonna get a little interactive with y'all. So hoping to get some interaction from folks tonight. Question for everybody here. Have you ever visited your state assembly member or state senator? And if so, what was your experience? And feel free to introduce yourself, come off mute, drop it in the chat if you're not able to. I see some say no, I haven't. Sherry says no. No. Okay. No. Okay. Nice. Nice. Well, I love that we get to kind of talk a little bit about that tonight and share about how you all can engage with your senators and assembly members and make it a lot more accessible for you. I know we have a couple of people here who have met with their senators. It's going to be mostly, I think, my team. So wondering if anybody from the team would like to come off mute and share their experience on what it might have been like visiting with your state senator, and maybe think way, way back before you were a staff member, when you were just a regular citizen.
I'm happy to share. Hey,
Awesome.
everyone. Sorry that I'm off camera right now. I will be on camera a little later, maybe. Antoinette Ratcliffe, pronoun she, her, and hers. I am the executive director here at Initiate Justice. For those who don't know, I actually became involved with Initiate Justice through our Institute of Impacted Leaders program. And that was actually my introduction, similar content as we're sharing tonight, my introduction to policy advocacy work. And so my first time meeting with my representative's office was organized sort of visits similar to the ones that we're doing this spring. And so I'll share a little bit about my experience because I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. It was during COVID, so it was on Zoom, and it was really interesting for the camera to come on, and the person sitting across me was a young Black man who just had on a regular t-shirt. And I've got my blazer on. I'm like, okay, I got this. And we had a very relaxed conversation. This person grew up in the same community that I grew up in. It's like, that was interesting to see. And me and this person are now actually like friends. He no longer works for the member's office and does other things in the community. But it was the start of like a valuable sort of networking relationship and just like general community partnership. And I remember just that moment being the one that demystified or sort of like relinquished any fear I had of like, I am meeting with these very important people that I don't know anything about, and found out that actually he was interested in hearing things that I could educate him on through my lived experiences, because though we grew up in the same community, we had completely different like backgrounds and kind of how our experiences growing up were in the neighborhood. And so, yeah, I'll share that because it was really eye-opening for me particularly.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Antoinette. Yeah, I think I resonate with that a lot, especially like the demystifying. I think I had a very similar experience the first time I did a legislative visit. And it was also just like, wow, this person is from my community, like they're from Stockton. They're not just some like person like on a hill somewhere that I only see on TV. Like it's a real person. They're from the community. And it was just a really like chill experience. I thought like I just kind of shared a lot about like what I do for work or what I did for work at the time, and just how like I came about policy and finding that and finding the Institute of Impacted Leaders here at IJ. So yeah, it was a really dope experience, and I appreciated it. And like Antoinette said, it also demystified it a lot. Like, oh, okay, I can just do this anytime. Like, so now I'm like, anytime I need to, I just pick up the phone, I call, or I'll shoot an email or something like that. So definitely a good experience.
I can share also. Mine's is similar to Antoinette's, where I lived prior to this. Actually, through the Institute of Impacted Leaders, we did it on Zoom as well. And going into the breakout rooms and stuff like that, I was like Antoinette, like just ready, prepared. Like I made sure I had a nice shirt on that day, right, and everything. And to see him just relax, for me, what did it was what I went in there nervous, real nervous, right, like not knowing what to expect. For me, what made it very comfortable was that he started cracking jokes first, kind of cracked jokes with us, and just was just like, having a normal conversation. That really allowed me to kind of just like let my shoulders down and relax and breathe. Had a great conversation. I got to share some of my experience since I had just recently been released from incarceration. So I got to share a little bit of my story with him. So that was one instance. Another instance with my the one that was with my representative, I have two new representatives now. But a couple years, 2 years ago, it was at a local community event. Went to this local community event with my family, and I recognized the face, and I was like, hey, why not? Let me go introduce myself. And it was a different feel. I just walked up, introduced myself, let them know I was a constituent, and for me, they started asking the questions like, "Oh, how long you been here, lived here," and things of that nature. So it was great to meet them in like a non-office setting, non-professional setting, so to speak. It allowed me just to be me, like always. But like I've learned now through the time, it's like always be yourself. They're here for us. And we're their constituents. They work for us. We put them in office and things of that nature. But yeah, like, so two different like settings that I got to experience. But again, just meeting them, it really allowed me to see that they're just human beings that just, some grew up in the same neighborhood as us, like, Antoinette was saying, and have similar experiences as us, or know someone that's experienced what we've experienced. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Efrain and Antoinette. Really appreciate that. And like you both shared, like the having these experiences definitely demystified the process for you and just made it really, really down to earth, you know, to sum it up. So then the reason why we asked this question is because we really wanted to see, not only see like how many of us have had these experiences, but again, encourage you all and make it and share our experiences to show those who haven't had this experience just how not easy, because I think once you've done something a while, it does become easy, but how accessible these meetings can be, and how simple it can be and end up being in the end. So really, really glad to see that we have a bunch of folks here who haven't done visits before, because that means we get to spend quite a little bit of time with each other, talking about how to engage with these offices, how to do these visits, the different types of things you can talk about and should talk about X, Y, and Z, and just how to engage overall. So really looking forward to the rest of tonight. But that is it for my portion. Are there any other questions about like the process of legislative visit or the legislature or the job of legislature? Anything at all? All right. If anything comes up, feel free to drop that in the chat, but I'm going to pass it on to Ephraim to keep us going.
Awesome. Visiting your state representative, right? We kind of talked about what that looks like, right? There's a couple different ways to do it. You can schedule visits with the district office or the capital office. One thing to note that each representative, whether assembly member or senator, have an office at both locations, one in the capital office and one in the district office. And just so you know, just because they're in the capital doesn't mean they don't have staff representing them here in their district. So again, their doors are always open to for them. So you can schedule visits with them. You do so by contacting them, contacting their office. I know Adriana shared the Find My Rep link earlier. You can easily click on your representatives, should take you to their website, and then their contact info should most of them, yeah, all of them should have their contact info on there. They'll actually have the address of their capital office and also their district office, and phone numbers as well, and things of that nature. So you can contact them that way. That's like one of the easiest ways, like really just contacting them. A lot of their, I'm not going to say all because I don't think all of them have it, but you can submit an online request for a meeting with them. Um, it's a quick form that you go in there, fill out your information. To meet with your representative, they ask like what the meeting is in regards to, whether you're advocating for a bill, right? Or it's just simply if you want to go meet them or whatever and talk about some issues that you might have in your personal life or in your community. That's another way to do it. We always suggest going with like a group or another constituent. Bring people along with you, right? Especially people with I think it makes it like less like nerve-wracking if you're going for your first time or anything like that. But it's also great for them to know that there's more than one person really like passionate of whatever the issue might be. Or if you're, say you're going there to oppose a bill, or support a bill, right? And letting them know how these bills might affect you or your community. So it's very important to, if you can get a group together, I met someone today in the chat that's is actually we are in the same both districts, the Assembly and the Senate. So that was so cool to see that. So definitely we'll be connecting. But again, yeah, if you can meet people that are in the same district with you or other constituents in that area, or maybe it's a family member, right? Take them along with you. Some of the things that you can discuss, as I mentioned, the bills issues, any issues regarding state agencies, if you have loved ones that are still currently incarcerated, right? Things of that nature. Anything, there's a litany of things that people that they'll discuss with you. If not, just know that your state representative can always also assist you. If they cannot assist you with it directly, they'll direct you put you in the right direction, and connect you to the right people in order to do that. I always say there's not one problem that we shouldn't come to them about. If there's an issue in our community or even with ourselves that we're having with our family members or things of that nature, personal issues, you know, it doesn't hurt to reach out, right? face visits. I know some of us talked about the Zoom meetings that we had through the Institute. Sometimes it can be a phone call that you just might want to get a phone call in there. But we always urge people to go face-to-face visits. They're very important when they see you in person, whether that be at their office here in the district, whether it be at the Capitol, or even at a community event, like I said. And we have here prepare for your meeting, right? If you're going to discuss a bill, if you're going to go discuss legislation and things of that nature, kind of prepare, have some facts about the bill, but again, you're going there to tell your story and how this bill either affects you or um it will harm our community, harm your community, right? So have some prep, do some preparation. Always expect questions. Just remember that you know they might have some questions as well, so be prepared to answer some questions. And again, just know it's not something, if you don't have the answer to there, it's something that you could always, it's an opportunity for you to follow back with them and meet them again later, to answer their question. So again, we talked about different ways to connect with your representative. Here we have the meet and greet, which is a little less informal. It's kind of just a way for you to get to know them, for them to get to know you, most importantly, right? Their constituent, some of the issues that you are passionate about, whether it's in your community or through legislation, things of that nature. But again, it's just a informal way for you to go. It's great to see put a face, behind a phone call or email instead, so that's just a little bit of informal. Again, you can do this in district, or in the Capitol. One thing I always like to remind folks is that their doors, during business hours, they're always open. There's always should always be someone there, whether it's the representative or one of their staffers. But don't hesitate to walk in, right? If you're up in the Capitol and you're over there by the swing space, what we call a swing space, where all the representatives are, pop in there, and say hello, right? Legislative visits, right? This one is a little bit more technical, as I mentioned. It's just where we're discussing the legislative bills, bills that we want them to support or oppose, right? And as I mentioned earlier, right, it's a way to share with them, these are people that are making decisions on legislation that can either help or harm our community, right? Or our loved ones or myself, right? So again, this is a great opportunity to show them how this legislation will impact us, whether good or bad. Drop-in visits, as I mentioned, don't hesitate to drop in, right? Drop in, say hello, make them see your face, make them know you. As Antoinette mentioned, she became friends with her representative. Um, it's a great way for you to have a conversation with them. Just drop in, say hi. Maybe an issue just arises, right? And you're in the area and you want to drop in, feel free to do that. I mentioned earlier community events. That's another great way. Um, I would say most, and I will say most because I haven't gone through all their websites, but most of their websites have their events listed on their website. So if you scroll through their websites, they'll have events that they'll be at. Um, Also, you can do what I do is follow them on social media and things of that nature, right? So I see that they'll post things where they're going to be at, things of that like that. So again, it's another way to connect with them, say hi, have a conversation with them, right? In a more social setting. Um, what's it called? And then letters, phone calls, and emails, as I mentioned. Another great way. I know sometimes if it's like legislation, we cannot make it to the Capitol. It doesn't mean that our voices cannot be heard. So these, dropping letters, phone calls, sending them emails, is a great way for them to hear our voices, even if they cannot see us in person, right? Um, so, and I'll pause there because I did say a lot, and I want to see if the team has anything to add or if anyone had any questions.
Nothing to add, but before folks come with their questions, I also wanted to say that social media is also, it's not on the slide, but the social media is also a great way to stay connected with your representative's office. I follow both my assembly member and my senator's Instagram pages. And so every time like they have a bill or they're out in the community or something, like I see it while as I'm scrolling doom scrolling on my feed. I see it. So that's a super great way to stay connected, know what's going on, know what they're working on, and know when they're going to be in the community or when they have been in the community. That's all I wanted to add. But yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to raise hands or drop it in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. And I just also wanted to highlight like something that we do, as you all know, with Initiate Justice, or most of you that know. But something that we do is also, invite our inside incarcerated members, our inside members, to be a part of this process, right? And that includes also with those letter writings, right? They submit letters of support for bills, sometimes bills that we're working on. But again, if there's issues that they know about, urge your family member, your loved one, to write those letters, right? Like I said, you can find their address, and they can also they too can also send that letter to their office, to allow their voices to be heard. I had a friend of mine who I urged, he was telling me about something, and he's like, well, which, I'm over here in this prison, but I was like, well, write to the legislator where you're a constituent of, before you got incarcerated, right? The community. But it's also, they can also write, because technically they are a constituent of that community wherever that prison may be at. So again, it's important to have their voices heard, in regards to that. And as I was mentioning earlier, these are just some of the many ways, the services that they offer as a constituent, of the district, right? They have ways. Not all representatives have it on their website, but this is just like an example, right? That you can see here in regards to like state taxes, Medi-Cal, Cover California, veteran benefits, right? Consumer complaints, the DMV issues, right? Things of that nature. So there's just like a pretty extended list here. If you could see just some examples that I wanted to highlight, and I know Adriana earlier shared a story, in regards of how her representative or her mom's representative, helped them out. Again, if there's something that you have an issue that you're facing, whether it might be rent control, right, or whatever it might be, I know, things like that, reach out, see if there's services and there's ways that they can help us out. Let's not hesitate to reach out to them. The why. It's always the why, right? Why visit your representative, right? Again, they hear from us directly from impacted community members, raise awareness. Oftentimes, I know I've been in meetings with representatives who had no idea of the issue that they might be voting on, as Adriana said, on the assembly floor or on the Senate floor, and they were unaware, but yet they're going to be casting a vote on it. So when they hear from us, they hear about how these issues truly impact us, our loved ones, our community, right? It amplifies the voices of all of us, right? Our voices that need to be heard, including our incarcerated loved ones, right? We influence the policy change, right? When they hear from us, trust me, there's power in numbers. We can influence policy change. Um, and then again, we hold them accountable, right? These are representatives that are supposed to be representing us, right? So when they're voting for things that are going to harm our communities, if we show up and let them know that we're not happy about it, chances they're gonna have to listen, especially, knowing that they're gonna have to be reelected for these positions. Again, we want to have people in these positions, that hear us, that listen to us, that know what matters to us. So it's important to hold them accountable, right? And I always say, right, it's like one thing I remind, and I'll say I remind myself, we often ask them to support us in some things, but I think one of the things that I'm trying to be better at is really following up, even when they do cast that vote, right? Following up with them, also thanking them, right? For voting in our favor, for supporting some of the issues that we're passionate about. Um, as I said, it reminds those who empower who they work for and represent, right? Again, they're here for us. And lastly, you see it there blinking at you. It's our right, it's our right to do this, right? One of the things that we want to do is really normalize getting to know your representative, getting to know them, for them to get to know you and the things that, affect us in our community. And with that, I believe I pass it over. Oh, Antoinette.
Yes, thank you. I just want to add one thing because it's something that we hear all of the time. And we've all kind of heard it, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And so oftentimes when decisions are being made in the Capitol, whether it's budget related, bill related, or just general conversations, legislators of their offices are going to lean to, well, in my district, people care about X. What I'm hearing from my constituents in my district is why. And so when you're showing up and we're making ourselves present and known about the things we care about, it starts to shift the conversation at the top, the conversation that's happening at the top. Because keep in mind that while it is hard, it takes time in a day, their offices are open on weekdays, not necessarily weekends, etc. Please believe me, people are calling the legislature about not having enough stop signs, not having enough crosswalks, the Airbnb that's next door to their house, because they just don't want to hear the noise. These are the things that people are bugging their legislators about. And so then they're going to take action on it. And so we've got to elevate our issues, our concerns to the same level that, your neighbor down the block is calling their representative's office about every Monday because she has to drive through somewhere where she wishes there was a stop sign, right? So I just want to kind of put that into context as well.
Thank you, Antoinette. And I feel like that was like a really good segue into like talking about the roles that you take on when you're speaking with your representatives, because like when you show up and you're present and you're more aware about the issue, it's going to be heard more, and I think it's going to get your point across. I know it will get your point across more. So now we kind of want to dive into like what roles you can take on when doing these legislative visits, but not even just like legislative visits, also just meet and greets, drop-ins. But these roles am I paused?
You did pause, but we can still hear you.
You're frozen, but we can still hear you.
Oh, that's such a bad shot of me. Okay. Okay, so I'll carry on. But so like I said, you can kind of take on different roles when doing these legislative visits, even if you're going to talk about a bill or just a specific issue with your representative. It's kind of important to kind of come at it with these certain facts, so these kind of help prepare you for it. And when you're meeting with your representatives, your roles may change based on the topic. So for example, if you're going to be meeting with them about a problem with CDCR, maybe like the point person role, they're not really going to talk about where a bill is at in the legislature. Instead, you're going to be talking about like the issue that's kind of happening with CDCR and kind of like helping them to address that. And for example, if you're going for like a meet and greet, you might not even have like a point person unless like you really anticipate these technical questions, but I'll go into that more as I talk about each role. And I'm still paused. It's so tough. Hold on, let me. Okay, yeah, I'm back. Okay, awesome. So one role that someone can take on. So usually, like we said, with these legislative visits, it's good to go with a group, but even if it's like not a group, it's cool if you can take on all these roles because you also just come like more informed. I guess I'm a person too that likes to like kind of come at things like over prepared. So like using these roles and kind of like knowing that can guide me in these conversations are super helpful too. So this is something that you can do in a group, but also on your own. So the first one is like the introducer or the framer. So that's someone that's going to come in, they're going to introduce your group, say, hi, we're with Initiate Justice. We want to speak to you about this bill. We want you to support or oppose it, or even if it's an issue. They're also going to be able to kind of just like help you keep the group on track, like keeping an eye on time, wrapping up the meeting, and also getting context from whoever you may speak with. So if it's the staffer, if it's the representative themselves, they're going to make sure that you get all that information. And then also like a guiding little script down here too is super helpful. Like I said, I like to be over prepared. I like the scripts, so I like this as well. And I'm gonna probably go through these super quick, but I'll pause for questions after I go through each role if that's helpful. And then next will be your point person. So as I mentioned, this can kind of change like depending on what you're meeting with the representatives about and like what the meeting topic is. So if it's like a certain bill, you may be asking, you're gonna come at like, sorry. So this person kind of gonna be like familiar with the facts of the bill. They're gonna be able to like answer the technical questions and also like ask them too. So if it is about a certain bill or a certain issue, like what does this bill do? How does it change current law? What is the current status of the bill? Who's supporting or opposing? How much will it cost? Things like that. So those kind of help you just kind of come at the conversation with facts and like make sure that you're kind of getting all the information that you need. As we mentioned though, like if you're going to be meeting for a meet and greet, you might not have to have a point person unless it's like really going to be like technical questions that you need to be asking at that time. And then the next role is the storyteller, which I like this one a lot. I think a lot of us can like relate to this too, as we have like that personal experience in this work. So most oftentimes the storyteller is going to be someone who's impacted by the issue or what the bill is trying to do, and they're going to be there willing to share their lived experiences. It's okay if you can't be the storyteller the first time or the second time that you go and meet them. Sometimes it takes time to warm up, but they also like do love to kind of have that like aspect be put in and kind of like humanize the issue. So usually the storyteller would just like give a little background that allows them to like get to know you and understand like your relation to the bill, and kind of like getting to know where you're coming from and how you're impacted. And then also too, the storyteller would be important in kind of like highlighting what values and lessons others can learn from your experience, like how this bill will like really impact others in your position. And also too, at that time, like as a storyteller, you can feel free to share what's comfortable. There's maybe people like to share as much as they want. Other people like to just share like what they think is necessary, and that's okay. So whatever is comfortable for you. Ephraim, you can go ahead too and chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually, I was thinking about I know what Adriana put in the chat. Um definitely in regards to like the point person. Just know like do the research, have the information ready, whether it's a bill that you're looking up and stuff like that. And then we have some stuff on YouTube we'll share with you all later of like how to find like how to track a bill and things of that nature. But just know like if you're going on a legislative visit with like Initiate Justice or a lot of our community partner organizations that are working on bills and things of that nature, you will have a fact sheet with a lot of the information, some of the frequently asked questions and all that stuff, like some preparation material for you to prepare before you go on a visit. Again, we don't want to like just say if you're coming with us, we're not going to just say throw you out there and have you do the research on your own. There will be information available for you all. But if it is a bill that you're looking up on your own or tracking, connect with the organizations that are co-sponsoring it, right? More than likely they have fact sheets and things already available. So that's a great way for you to have that information there handy if you are going to be that point person.
Thank you, Ephraim. And then another role that someone can take on too with these visits is the closer. So kind of near the end of the meeting, this person will kind of ask the legislative support for the bill, kind of saying, how do you think that the senator or assembly member will vote on this bill or these bills, or kind of like if it's an issue, just like what they think about the issue. So they'll kind of like wrap it up, ask if they need any follow-up information. So maybe leaving like a contact from the organization, from the group you're with, or even just your own information so they can follow up with you if they have any questions. And then also too, just like asking them if they have any questions. I remember when I was on a legislative visit too, that there was actually like, I was kind of surprised by the amount of questions that I was getting from the staffer too. So that kind of reiterates that like importance of like making sure you have like some like research and are knowledgeable about like what you're going in to talk about, because there'll definitely be like some type of question too. So just making sure that everything's clear before you leave. And then if not, they make sure that your contacts are provided so they can follow up with you. And then lastly, my favorite one, because I'm kind of an introvert, so, and I get like nervous in these settings. So I think too, if you're kind of going on these and kind of the same, I think it would be helpful if you might want to take on like this role. And also too, I think it helps you, I personally will say it kind of helped me like really soak up the whole thing. And like, I don't know, it was cool to like come at it from that lens and kind of record everything. So I liked this role. But the note taker ultimately is the person who's recording the notes on the note page. Here's like an example of the note sheet we have. Sometimes it'll just be like your own notebook. You can also probably find many other resources online to have like a template for you when you go in. So this one they'll just be writing down questions or comments that come up during the meeting from the representative or the staffers or anyone else. And also just like making sure that responses are recorded on how the member will vote on the bill if they indicate it in that moment. And then also too, just like at the end, making sure that they got all the information that they need, like the staffer's name if they meet with the staffer and the title. And then at the end, they'll make sure that they have everything recorded and just sharing that with whoever if they keep it for themselves, or if you're doing legislative visits with our organization, then you would hand it back to the point person who may be like Adriana, Antoinette, or Efrain. And that's about it for that one. But I'll pause there too to see if anyone has any questions around like the roles. I kind of sped through as well, so apologies.
I don't have a question, but I will just say, like, the different roles, I think it can seem, especially if you haven't done any type of engagement with your representative before, right? A visit, a meet and greet, an email, anything like this can all seem very, very daunting, right? Like all of these roles, and oh my gosh, like you need all of this just to go in and talk to your representative. And so as we're talking about these roles, definitely just want to reiterate that these are helpful guidelines to follow when you're doing a legislative visit, whether it's a meet and greet or anything. You can always do a visit by yourself, solo bolo, and just go in there and just make it about you and whoever you're meeting with. Sometimes you're not always going to have notes. Sometimes you're not going to have notes. It's a good habit to get into the habit of taking notes. So that way, like, you just have little things, maybe there's things that you want to make note of, not necessarily stuff that you want to follow up on, but just something to make note of, right? Like maybe your representative's office really cares about a particular issue, right? And so you want to make note of that because sometimes that can really go into your strategy of how you're going to engage and how you might talk about certain issues, right? So for example, I know there's quite a few representatives who've made it their mission to sort of support and be there legislatively and otherwise for folks who have been harmed by crime, right? And so sometimes when I have been talking to legislators about like some bills that either Initiate Justice is co-sponsoring or otherwise, right? I always make sure to put it in the lens of like, this is going to be helpful to folks that have been harmed before, and here's how, right? Or this is going to stop people from being harmed, and here's how, right? And so always wanting to make sure I'm kind of dialing in on like what's important to this representative, right? What's important to them? What do they care about? Do they have kids? Are they married? Like all of these different things about their personality can really, really help you when you're going into a visit, a meet and greet, any type of conversation with them. And again, these are just things that you can make note of, even while you're engaging in visits. So just kind of wanted to make that little, not point, but just kind of expand on some of the information and try to make some of this seem a little less daunting. But definitely feel free. This is a lot of information. So if you have questions, definitely raise your hand, get them in the chat. Or it's totally okay if you're like me sometimes, where I'm just like, I just need to process it all. And maybe I'll have a question later. Totally fine. Totally fine. So just want to reiterate that too. Back to you,
Thank
Brianna.
you for reiterating that. And also too, like just as you mentioned too, these are just like guidelines and like little tips on like how you can conduct these visits too, but also too like I think it'll be how they could be something that's helpful for just like if you do drop in visits to kind of getting an idea of how to approach the conversation for the first time. So I think these are super helpful. And like Adriana said, if you have any questions or anything, or just like need tips for maybe your first visit or anything, we're here as a resource. So please feel free to reach out. And then with that, I think, oh, we have a question.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
This is Nat August, and I said it in the chat, but I'm with Sentinel Youth Services. We're here in Los Angeles. And I just had a more general question. I'm not sure who I should direct it to specifically, but so basically, because of the current political climate for this year, our organization is not going to be proposing or pushing any bills. And instead, we plan to just focus on educating our local representatives about our work within the field of restorative justice. And so I was wondering if you guys have any recommendations on how to best connect with our reps within that particular context. Like, would you recommend a meet and greet over a drop-in, for instance, or like any other insights into that type of thing? Would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can definitely share. Well, Antoinette, you raised your hand too, so definitely feel free to hop in. I lost my train of thought right now. You hop in before me, and I'm gonna get my train of thought back. Go ahead, Antoinette.
I hate that I did that. I really would have preferred for you to take space and me not to take up so much space. So I'm sorry that I made you lose your train of thought. And my camera is like terrible. So sorry about that, everyone. So first of all, thank you so much for being here, and also really relating to the need to educate the legislature. So as a member of the California Restorative Justice Policy Coalition, that is the goal there. And so I think that there's a myriad of ways that you can do it. I think that meet and greets are great. I think that having people who have participated in restorative justice programs or restorative justice services, I think having them just build a relationship with legislative offices in district is extremely valuable. I think likewise, also doing intentional sort of like more structured visits in the Capitol with the legislative staff, because these are the ones who are going to be like receiving bills that may be related to restorative justice and analyzing them for the member and then advising the member on like, here's, this bill, here's what it does. And if they understand more clearly from an authentic perspective, what restorative justice is, what it's intended to do, how it is helpful, then they can better inform their member when they are taking into consideration bills that relate to or might hinder restorative justice processes. So I think that a sort of dual approach of like just building the relationship so that when they're thinking about restorative justice, they're thinking about particular families or people in their communities, and having an approach that happens at the Capitol so that legislative staff have like, and that would be maybe a little bit more structured where there's talking points. Hey, understand that here is what restorative justice does. Here's when it works best. Here's some data points of how we know it works best. I know like we met with Assembly Member Arambula's office, and he mentioned wanting to connect with us more to get educated on restorative justice because of the high school program in his region in Central Valley that he had heard was doing really well. And how can we get more data that sort of that illustrates this? And so that's where that conversation is going. So I think that I think that both are extremely valuable, and also open space to other people here, both on the team. Adriana, you had some initial thoughts, or others who might have additional insights to kind of share what may have worked for them if you've done it in the past.
Yeah, I was gonna just to add to that, I think most of what you said I was gonna say. So thank you for catching my train of thought. But I wanted to add to this, especially if you're like working for an organization, it might be a little bit more likely if you're working for an organization. So a few years ago, I wasn't staff here at IJ yet, but a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to testify in an informational hearing in Assembly Public Safety. So it was simply just an informational hearing. So it wasn't about bills or anything. Like they were there to figure out a solution to a problem. And so I was there to give, my personal testimony and then my 2 cents as to what I thought was the solution to the problem. And so I was given about 15 minutes of space to just sort of talk and share. And then afterwards engage in sort of like a Q&A with the members on the committee. And so that's also another way if you get the opportunity to participate in a informational hearing in either the Senate or the Assembly. Highly recommend. It's really really cool. It's not necessarily, it's still open to the public, but it's not like I said, it's less pressure because there's no bills. You're not trying to get something through. You're just trying to expose them to a little bit more information, and you have the opportunity to kind of present a little bit more facts. And there's a lot more testimony time in an informational hearing. So I just wanted to add that piece, especially for folks working for organizations on different types of issues.
Thank you both so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a great question. Any other questions from folks tonight? All righty. And I believe we're passing it back to Ephraim for these next few slides. Yeah. All right, Ephraim, take it away.
Oh yeah, I'm next. uh, some tips for success. As we mentioned, do your best to be informed. But it's also okay not to know the answer, right? This creates opportunity for follow-up, as we mentioned, throughout this meeting. And sometimes that information being informed looks different, right? If you're just going for a meet and greet and you just want them to get to know you, jump on their website, look at their bio, check out some of the stuff that they've worked on in the past years or whatever it might be, right? Kind of look at that research and, prepare that way, right? It might just look that way. Um, if it's in regards to legislative bills, right? Get that information. As I mentioned earlier, it might be co-sponsored bills that we're co-sponsoring or another organization. Try to get those fact sheets and have that information handy with you. One of the things we always say, do not debrief if you're with a group in the hallway, right outside their office. Walls do have ears, right? So just always take that precaution, have a conversation, whether it be outside in the parking lot, somewhere else, away from their office. Because they do have ears and you want to always leave a good impression with that representative. One of the things here that we also have highlighted, everyone you meet is important, regardless of their title. Um, I can't say that enough because their staffers are some of the hardest working people that I've seen, are doing all the research, are the people making the magic, are doing all the research behind the scene and, doing all of that stuff. So yeah, we meet with a lot of staffers, right? No matter if they're the policy, the main policy person or whatever it might be, or just one of their regular staffers at the office, they're all important. Or if you get to meet with the representative themselves, right? They're all important. So remember that always. They're the ones providing that feedback to that representative. If you're meeting with the staffer, they're the ones bringing those issues to them. If you're meeting with the in-district staffer, things of that going on in the community, their representative might be at the Capitol, but you're meeting with someone in their district, one of their in-district staffers. Again, they're going to relay that information and have that information for them. So yeah, we can't say stress. I can't stress that enough. Everyone you meet there is important. Um, and as Brianna mentioned earlier, even if you're doing storytelling or whatever it might be, only share what you're comfortable with, right? Again, um, we all have different lived experiences. Some of them, bring up that trauma. Some of them might bring up that trauma. Um, you know, Share what you're comfortable with, take care of yourself, and a couple other things is just always be yourself, be you, you know. As I mentioned, I know there's many that have not met their representatives here in this space, which is lovely to see, but it's like we encourage you all to go be there, be yourself. And then when you meet with them, you'll see that they're just be going to be their authentic self too. As I mentioned, someone that when I met with a representative, they're cracking jokes and all that. Others, we got to share some personal, experiences. They're talking about their kid, things of that nature. It's always good to see again, we're all, just be you. And most importantly, have fun, have fun. Have fun, whether it's a meet and greet, whether you're advocating for bills, or advocating for something else in your community. Just always have fun, um, and build those connections. You know, Antoinette, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I just want to add briefly around one, yes, build the relationships, right? You want this person to like recognize you if they see you, in the Capitol, if it's someone, a legislative staff in the Capitol, or even in the community. You want them to recognize you, like you want to build that relationship. I wanted to follow up on the piece you named around everyone is important, because also keep in mind that staff members, so the legislative staff who are, or even just like the district staff who are working for members, they oftentimes also move offices and move around in the Capitol or move around in the state legislature. And so someone that you may have built a relationship with in the assembly might then move to the Senate House and work for a senator. And now you have a relationship in that office. And so it also expands your reach, your connection, your influence, as an individual, as an advocate, expands like, who your story or your loved one's story is reaching. So I also just wanted to share that piece around like people move around. And so that can then expand your network. And I think that is a very valuable piece of the work as well.
And I know there was a question by Jasmine. Could we learn more about the drop-in visits? I see that you go to the Capitol. Oh, there it is. I know Adriana responded to it as well. And I think we have the address. I believe it's 1021 O Street, if I'm not mistaken, right? If someone could drop it on there. But yeah, they have
I think that is the 1021 O Street. So I'll just sum it up really quickly. The drop-in process, like the drop-in process is exactly like it sounds. You can drop into your state rep's office either in district. So like, for example, my rep's in district office is here in Stockton, or I could go out to Sacramento to the Capitol and meet with her staff there. And so it's not an official, probably you don't need an official appointment. You don't need to let anybody know you're dropping by. It does need to be between business hours, but you can definitely just drop in and say, hey, does anybody have a quick moment to speak with me? Now, I will be honest and say when you're dropping in, you may only get 5 minutes, you may get 3 minutes, you might get 2 minutes. Right. So we definitely highly recommend to schedule a visit because that way you're guaranteed to have at least 30 minutes of time, unless they otherwise tell you that. But yeah, definitely you can feel free to do a drop-in visit. And like I said, you can go to the Capitol, which would be the O Street in Sacramento, or your local representative's office in your local district.
Yeah, and as someone who's a huge fan of drop-ins, I will also say, Jasmine, because I see you're naming that, like sometimes you don't have a lot of advance notice. Even if it's like 2 days or a day, you can always try emailing the scheduler and like, hey, you can reach out to us for support with that also and say, hey, I'm going to be in the area. I really want to talk about this issue or talk about this bill. Is there someone who can give me a couple of minutes of your time? And you can try to get something sort of like calendared that way, even if it's a couple of days ahead of time. But definitely do not hesitate to drop in, even if it's just to say, hey, I'm a constituent, I'm in the area, I want to introduce myself. And there may be someone who can take a couple of minutes. And like Adriana said, it may not be a lot of time, But we've gotten lucky before and got like 30 minutes of someone's time. And that is, like that's not common, but it was well appreciated. So just never hesitate to drop in.
Thank you. I really appreciate that 'cause I have to travel. I work in an unrelated field, but I have to travel to Sacramento pretty often, but I don't get too much advance notice of when I'll be going. And every time I go to Sacramento, I think to myself, wow, I wish I could be doing something out here for the things that I'm passionate about and my loved ones. So that's super helpful and really encouraging, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely, for sure. And let us know if we can be any more help. You need any more tips, tricks, resources, definitely let us know.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love also like the drop-ins, and I think one time we did a walk and talk. Like it was Senator Bradford was like coming out of his office and going somewhere, and he was all like, "Yeah," he's all like, "I was like, yeah," he's like, "I don't, but if you want, walk and talk with me." I was like, "All right, cool." That walk to the elevator was more than enough, like an elevator pitch of what we wanted to accomplish. So. But there we have you'll see on your screen there just some more information of some of the links that we've already shared with you all. Again, we will send this all in the recap space. But I did want to give some time to Antoinette as we have an important call to action. So I'll pass it over to you, Antoinette.
Yeah, thank you. Before you move from this screen, I'm not sure if you were going to, sorry, but so I'm going to share like some very tangible ways you can get involved with a particular bill that we're moving right now. But I also just really want to highlight the spring visits, and please encourage that you participate in those, and really like think through maybe a friend or a family member who may want to join you. Those are also like things we want to encourage you to do, like bring people along. Really excited for meet and greets. I'll be leading a couple as well, so I'm super excited, and hope to like debrief with you all after and see how it went, especially since we have so many people here who haven't done them at all. So other ways that you can get involved. Initiate Justice has a 6-bill legislative package this year. So we are moving 6 pieces of legislation through the legislature. One in particular is being heard next week in Assembly Public Safety. It is AB 622, which is the Rehabilitation Recognition Act. And for this bill, we are in need of a strong showing of community power, people power, and community support. So one thing that I first just want to emphasize is that there are multiple ways, as Ephraim, Adriana, and Brianna talked about, there are multiple ways to like show our power, to voice our experiences, to share our voices with our legislators. For AB 622, we need 2 really, really strong sort of demonstrations of power. One is going to be submitting individual letters of support to the state legislature. And the second is going to be for anyone who can be in Sacramento next week on Tuesday, April 8th. So again, this is just one example of how you can get involved today and sort of start putting these tools immediately to use. So the first thing that I do want to do, though, before I kind of jump into walking through those, is just kind of explain what AB 622 is, and also sort of like drop some resources in the chat. So first, if you go back and watch our March meeting, you'll get a more thorough sort of overview of all of our bills in our package, including AB 622. But I'm going to drop the fact sheet in the chat that I would highly encourage everyone to check out. But basically, this is in response to the CJLF litigation against CDCR that is causing people who have indeterminate sentences, who have done the work, who have put in the time and effort to take rehabilitation education courses and programs, to maintain positive conduct and behavior. They've put in the work. They've gone before the parole board. California Board of Parole Hearings has deemed that they are not a risk to society and that they are fit to be released back into our communities by their standards, which are very strict. However, due to this litigation, they are still being held even though they have been granted parole by our parole board. And so what this litigation does is it puts into the California Penal Code that credits can be used to advance the minimum eligible parole date for people with indeterminate sentences so that those people who have been granted parole but are still being held can then be released. So it's really critical. We're talking about people who have earned their freedom and are still being held captive by our system. And so what we need is I need each of you here today to submit a letter to the state legislature. And it's really simple because we have a template for you. And what you'll do is you'll go to tinyurl.com/passab622. And at this link, it'll bring you to an already sort of pre-drafted letter with instructions. I don't know if I have the power to share my screen, but since I already have an account, it'll look a little bit different because you'll have to create an account. But you'll go to the website at the top of that form and you'll create an account. It'll just ask for your name. You'll create an account as an individual. And then let me share my screen. Let's see. And you'll submit a letter. So organizations, we do this for every bill that we're supporting or opposing before we go to the Capitol and actually voice our support or opposition in a hearing. Sometimes it is really powerful for individuals to also do the same. And you don't even need a request from an organization to do this. You can do this for bills because you care. But we really need people to do this for AB 622. We've gotten some really nasty opposition thus far. And we've got to really fight back and make sure that the legislature understands the importance of this bill. So I'm going to share my screen just to kind of, I have a bunch of indicators that I don't know what they mean. Hold on, let's close this. Interesting. I don't think it's going to let me share my screen. Screens. Okay, so there may have been something. I know Zoom went through some changes recently. I seen it. They had some updates. So I'm not able to share my screen, but that is okay. Again, at the top of this document, you'll log in or you'll create an account. You'll create an account as an individual. It'll ask for your name, your information, your email. And then what you'll do is you'll take this template letter. You'll personalize it a little bit with your information, why this might matter to you. Maybe you know someone who has an indeterminate sentence. Maybe you know the power of credit earning and positive programming. Maybe you have, or maybe you have a loved one who is impacted by the CJLF litigation and is being held past, being granted parole. But you'll have an opportunity in that letter to kind of add a little bit of why you care. And then you will log into the portal with your newly created account. You'll search for the bill, which is AB 622, and then you'll upload your letter. It only takes a couple of minutes, but a couple of minutes that can make all the difference. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions. Maybe you haven't done this before and you're like, wait a minute, go through that one more time. That was really fast. Or I actually do need a visual code. So can somebody share their screen? And I'll try to see if someone else here can. But I'll pause there to see if there's any questions or thoughts. No, how many people think that tonight or tomorrow they can do this? I see Sherry. Anyone else? I see 2 thumbs up. Nat, Sophie. Okay. And I see some coming through in the chat. Amazing. Okay. Thank you. So the deadline to do this, for it to be reflected for the Public Safety Committee, is actually tomorrow at 3 p.m. So I would strongly, strongly urge you all to do this before tomorrow at 3 p.m. It won't take a bunch of time. If you want to call me and I walk you through it, let me know if you run into a roadblock. But we really do need these letters to be submitted. And then the second thing that you can do if you're in Sacramento, I'm not sure based upon the responses, how many of you might be in Sacramento when you all responded with who your legislators are. And it's not in my chat anymore because I switched devices. So if you are in Sacramento or can get to Sacramento or with a little bit of support or even without support, we would also appreciate your presence at the Capitol. And you can let us know at tinyurl.com/support AB622. And that would be on Tuesday, April 8th. The team will be there. A lot of our community members and our co-sponsors for the bill will be there. And that looks like Uncommon Law, Ella Baker Center, Bridges to Hope, the USC Post-Conviction Project, and a myriad of others. You can watch our March meeting recording for a full list of co-sponsors for the bill and also check out the fact sheet. Thank you for the time. I think I am like just at it and there's other updates from the rest of the team. So I'm going to step back and just encourage people to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, but let's get some letters in before 3 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much.
No questions in the chat or anything as of right now. But as Antoinette said, let's get those letters out. We'll be following up in the recap email with just some more information on that and just like the step-by-step process, which is in the document that she linked below. Other than that, we'll just be sharing some links that we have. We have our May community meeting coming up next month. And then we also have a couple events and then the spring meet and greets. So we'll drop all those in the chat. But as always, thank you so much for joining us tonight and always being in space with us. It's always a pleasure. So thank you all. And I hope you have a good rest of your night.